gonna do 10 honorable mentions because I want to, and it's my channel, so I can do what I want. Why didn't I just make a top 20? I don't know. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Book Stamp. My name is Kate, and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books in the year 2020. So ever since I started my booktube channel, like, this is literally the video I've been the most excited to make. I love watching these. I literally go back and watch booktubers from like 2015. I watched their top 10s, and picking 10 books this year was so difficult. It's been so difficult. I've been thinking on it forever. And so right now I'm sitting at, I've read I think 123, 124 books. So my top 10 is like less than 10% of the books that I read. And I gave a lot of 5 stars this year. I read a lot of 5-star books. I'll talk about it more in my like yearly stats wrap up. So picking 10 books has been incredibly difficult. And so I definitely wanted to have a large honorable mention section because there were so many books that just could not make it in the top 10, but were so good for different reasons, and maybe they weren't my most enjoyable and like all-time love reads, but were still important and I want to mention. So some of my honorable mentions include Anna on the Edge by A.J. Sass, which is a middle grade story about a non-binary figure skater who is coming to terms with their gender and sort of navigating that process. And it was so beautiful and well done, and such an important book that I felt like it had to be mentioned. Also, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This was such an important and like novel of the zeitgeist this year that I feel like it really has to be mentioned. It's also just superb. Like, it's so well written. The themes are so well done. I loved it so much. It just didn't quite eke it out into my top 10. We also have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which is a very important adult fantasy novel that is really pushing the sort of boundary of what fantasy is and what it can talk about. And it was just a little too dark for me to truly love. Also, I haven't finished the series, and for me it's really difficult to sort of rank a book in a trilogy without having finished the trilogy. Sort of on the same vein, we have Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, which is such an amazing YA fantasy book that really deals with a lot of really complex themes and really sort of elevates what a typical YA fantasy book is, and I really loved it. And we have A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. I'm so sad that this is the one book that I like would have made a top 11 just to fit it in, because I love this book so much. I love Hank Green and I love all of the themes in this book, but it kind of felt weird having a sequel on here because I do think it really benefits from the first book, even though I think the second one is better. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get into my top 10, starting with number 10, which is what? I don't know. Number 10 is A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum. This is a book that was part of, I think, Reese Witherspoon's book club, and it is one of those books. I think I read it in March and I still think about it regularly. It is a multi-generational family tale of a Palestinian family that has immigrated to the US and sort of navigating the entire family's arranged marriages and their love lives. And there's sort of a mystery at the central theme, and it's revealed like almost, I think, on the last page of the book what happened, and it just is one of those books that has sat with me and I have thought about so much since I read it. Number 9 is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I just finished this, I think, in the month of December, and it made it on my top 10. So I am in love with this book. And while it is a series, I think each of the novels in the book series is essentially a standalone. While there are characters that sort of intertwine from the different stories, it is not like following one set storyline. And so this is just like what I want when I read a sci-fi book. It is super gay. There's like space shenanigans. There's weird time stuff. There's socio and political like commentary and commentary on different cultures. And I think it's a book that every time I reread it, I will learn something new. The audiobook is fantastic. I loved it so much, and I loved all of the characters, and I can't wait to keep reading the series. Coming in at number 8 is Southernmost by Silas House. This is the book that started me on my Appalachian literature sort of trend. one of my friends from college just like randomly posted about it on his Instagram story. I picked it up and fell in love. It's about a pastor who sort of has a come to Jesus meeting, so to say, after a flood in his small rural Tennessee town that is literally next door to where I live. But basically the pastor has a sort of come to Jesus meeting about how he has treated and felt about gay people in particular, and is essentially forced out of his church, and he flees to Key West with his son to try and go find his brother. Hijinks ensue. Not really, they just kind of hang out in a hotel. It really sort of was one of the first like real adult books that I read, and really changed sort of the emotions that I felt like books could bring me, and I just love this book so much, and I think more people should read it. Number 7 is A Streetcar. Wait, I have this book. Number 7 is A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Oh, this won a Pulitzer Prize. I didn't know that. This play packs such a punch. I've seen the ballet, I've seen the movie, I've listened to the radio version, I've read the play, and I do think this is the best version of it. I think Blanche Dubois is a seriously misrepresented and like underrated character. Ever since I was a kid, like my dad has always said to me, I've always depended upon the kindness of strangers, and so actually seeing like the textual evidence behind that quote just like wrecked me emotionally. Still, I'm like gonna cry thinking about it. But this play is so good. It's my favorite play of all time, one of my favorite books of all time. I want to go reread it right now. Maybe that's what I'll do. Coming in at number 6 is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and I did read the entire series this year, and I do think The Fifth Season was my favorite out of the trilogy. Just like I felt like the second person worked the best in this instance, and like the character reveal was really good, and it really set up the world in such a compelling way, and I was so invested in the story. And so putting it on the list, it really represents the entire trilogy, but The Fifth Season was my favorite of the books. I really loved it so much. I read it on audiobook, and I really want to get the physical copies to reread it physically, because I think I'll get another layer to the book where with the audiobook I really got the sort of narrative structure and the themes, but I would really love to delve more into N.K. Jemisin's writing with a physical copy of the book. Coming in at number 5 is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I read this year on audiobook. I had read Circe by Madeline Miller previously and thought it was okay. I thought it was clever and interesting, but it just I didn't really emotionally connect to Circe that much. But The Song of Achilles, y'all, wrecked me. I cried so hard. I was listening to it on audiobook and driving home, and was just like tears streaming down my face, crying at the ending. And basically this book just covers the legend of Achilles during the Trojan War from Patroclus's point of view, going from their childhood through, what happens. It's a 2,000-year-old story, but it's so good. It's so good. I could not believe that it was that good. Coming in at number 4 is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book really surprised me. I did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. Nobody told me that, spoiler alert, Evelyn Hugo is our bisexual icon. I love her so much. I would die for Evelyn. I would die for Celia. The book is so well done in sort of exposing Evelyn's character and building her narrative and life story and why she is the way she is. She had 7 husbands. Like the last line of the book, like, I think they'll care more about my wife. Oh, I think about that regularly. It's one of the best lines. I love the book so much. The audiobook is just phenomenal. Cannot recommend enough. Please go read it if you haven't listened to BookTube already. Oh, top three, y'all. Coming in at number 3 is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is another book where I did not believe the hype. I was like, this book cannot possibly be this good. People cannot love it as much as they do. I'm not a huge romance reader. Like, I love a good romance, but it's not what I go seeking out in my books. And so I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. Y'all, Alex Claremont Diaz would die for that boy. Put make me his Secret Service guard. I would gladly take a bullet for him. Gladly. I love the book so much. I thought Casey McQuiston is I want to be her friend. I want to be her best friend. Casey McQuiston, if you're watching this, call me up. I think we would gab about Southern politics all day long. I want to let it be known. I love this book so much. I think about it regularly. I have a whole review where I gush about it a lot more. So go watch that if you're interested. And go read this if you still haven't read it somehow. And then coming in at number 2, we have This Is How You Lose the Time War, Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This is a science fiction novella that covers our two time traveling enemies. So it's a good enemies to lovers romance with our main characters Red and Blue, and it's an epistolary novel, them writing letters to each other throughout time. And it's so weird. It's so beautiful. It defies categorization and explanation. I love it so much. It was one of those books that it took me a while to get into, but like the second I finished, I want to just reread it. I actually got the hardcover for Christmas, and I think it's going to be like my first read of 2021 is rereading this book, because Red and Blue, I love them so much. And then finally, coming in at number 1, if you have listened to me talk at all this year, you probably can already guess what this is. And it is the one, the only, Transcendent Kingdom by Ya Jessie. Ya Jessie is now my favorite writer of all time after I read Transcendent Kingdom and Homegoing by her this year. I have an entire review for Transcendent Kingdom where I talk for 20 minutes, and I have a mini existential breakdown mid-review, so please go watch. It's interesting, to say the least. I don't know that it makes much sense. I basically just read the book and cry. But I have never felt so seen by a character as I have with Gifty. Just the sort of exploration in the book of religion and science, and so much of Gifty's personality and character was like literal thoughts that I've had in my head. It's a very introspective book, dealing with her mother's depression, her brother's addiction, and then her sort of how she copes with that and trying to understand the world through becoming an addiction researcher. And I just think it's one of the most important and amazing books I have ever read. I love it so much. It is one of those books that it took me like a week and a half to read because I just had to sit with the characters and what was happening. It was a library book, and I had, I think, 40 or 50 post-it notes of just like thoughts while reading it in there. It was one of those books that I just absolutely love, and I think more people should read it. I have not seen it on enough best of 2020 lists, especially by like major publications, and I think it is absolutely deserving of that title. So wow, those are my top 10 books of the year. I have linked a list to a bookshop list down below. If you want to go and check any of those out and support local indie bookstores, I highly recommend that. So were any of these books your favorite of the year? Or there were a lot of backlist titles on this. So were any of those like your favorite in your previous? Please let me know. What was your favorite book of the year that I didn't read? Please let me know. But thanks for hanging out.